something you learned recently?
Just let go of certain things, you know. I think in my job you travel so much and it's just impossible to keep everyone happy. Do you know what I mean? In personal life and even in terms of like people who support your music and stuff, it's impossible. So I have to let go of that sometimes. Yeah.
Another really useful little tip that I've learned in my long career of insanity is a halt, which is am I hungry? Am I angry? Am I lonely? Or am I tired? And so, if I'm like in a spiral, I'll just go, okay, wait, hold up, bro. Have you eaten anything today? Probably not, and so like I'll address those four things and then I'll like move on.
We were talking about it off camera earlier, like how this last year, the last 2 years, I feel like I've just been more self-reflective and focusing on growing, not just as an artist, but like as a woman, as a spirit. And I've just become more analytical and more just taking inventory of self. The pandemic kind of forced me to do it because I was working so much and running so hard, and I hadn't really paused to realize the baggage I was carrying.
I'm just so glad that like we have kind of figured out a balance.
Yeah.
Because even when I was like, a lot younger before my first record deal, I had this song called Hustling. You know what I'm saying? And it's like, that was the mentality that we came up with. It's like, everything is a hustle. You got to grind. No sleep. That's all bull, bro. Like, we need to, you know what I mean? To rejuvenate. We need to have a good balance. Like, it's good to be on the grind, but it's also good to like make sure that you're good. You know what I'm saying? Or else
Absolutely.
the grind stops.
You spoke about a lot of things in there, and that I think that means a lot to a lot of people. Just with, you had a few lines where you're talking about skipping medication, and lines where you're never feeling like you're being yourself.
Yeah, I mean, Amelia she's this part of myself, and I've put so much pressure on her. So you're just like, I'm trying to like personify this character so I could be like, kind of understand that like every part of you is you. Would you talk to yourself the way you talk to like to your friends? Like, talk to yourself the way you talk to your friends. Like, don't be so hard on yourself. And like, I feel the same way about like, personifying, bits of your brain and being like, you're me. Why would I, degrade myself or make myself feel bad or sad? Amelia has like had all this pressure, put on her by me, and she is me. So I think that inevitably when that happens, you end up losing little bits of yourself, and her being one of them. So be easy on yourself. It's hard. But talking, even if it's just to a friend, opening up, because you can only take so much yourself.
The worst times in my life and the saddest moments of my fucking life, there's that song that I listen to that makes me feel like someone else is out there that's experiencing that pain as well. It just makes me feel less alone. And that can be just as valuable as a song that says, hey, like, there's a way out of this, or there's a light. I think the most helpful thing anybody can do when it comes to mental health is ask for help.
Therapy was a big thing for me. I think it took me a minute to get to it, and it wasn't because I was like against it. It was just I'm so used to being like aware and in control of things, to admit that like I wasn't on my best was kind of hard for me to like get to that point. So it took the people around me, or like one person around me, to be like, you look like you got everything together to everybody else, but to me, nah, I could see that, and that ain't cool. And it took a minute for me to be like, I agree. So therapy was for sure like the number one thing that helped me just start to grow up. And it wasn't about like having an answer to everything. It was just about having somebody to talk to. And once I got to say things out loud, it was like, okay, cool. Now that I said it out loud, and it's not like in here and up here, I have a better idea of like what to do about it, versus just keeping it inside and building up resentment and starting to react in ways that don't really like align with like how I want to be. So therapy was a big one.
I'm grateful enough and lucky enough to have been able to have a therapist for a while, which is like something I do not take for granted, and that has helped me kind of open up to my friends and kind of just be able to be like, this is how I feel, and then they're like, oh, I feel like that too, and I'm like, okay, so I'm not, wrong to feel this way. It's still such a niche topic that it's kind of hard to be like, hey, is it weird that like I feel this way, So try talking. Yeah. Feels really good.
If I'm really in a tough spot, I reach out. I'll go to a meeting, or I'll call a counselor, or I'll talk to a friend, or I'll just call my mom, and just be like, what would you do? Because I think that's like, it's just the first thing for me that helps me. And I think that's the of mental health and wellness and recovery is that, like, we've all got our tips, and we've all got the things that work for us.
I'm in therapy now, which has been really good. And something that I'm learning is that I am not responsible for other people's reactions to me setting boundaries. I've never realized that, like, I would come in and be like, oh, like, they were really uncomfortable when I said that this made me uncomfortable. And my counselor was like, that's not your... That's their reaction is not your fault.
Yeah.
And I was like...
I was doing therapy. We discussed, like, kind of the turning point for me where things started to get dark. And it was a performance that I had done where I think I missed the pickup into the second verse. I like fudged the words, and it was in front of this whole industry thing. And I just really started to like talk negatively about myself and like beat myself up. My therapist said, like, okay, let me ask you this. Like, what would you rate that? And I said, well, I would rate that as like a catastrophic failure. She's like, okay, so on 1 to 10, what is it? I'm like, it's a 10. Like that failure in a room full of all these people, like basically like I'm a loser and I screwed up. She goes, if you were in the audience and your best friend was on stage and they missed the first 2 words of a second verse and recovered, how would you rate that? I was like, I don't know, like a 2. And she goes, then why don't you extend the same grace to yourself that you'll extend to other people? And in that moment, I just was like, I was floored by that. I was like, okay. So in life, that's what I would say. It's just like, extend the grace that you're willing to extend to the people that you love to yourself, because we are not kind to ourselves at all.
Let's talk about kids' health phone. I want to get that.
Oh my goodness. Yes, yes.
A lot of meaning behind that. Something really important for sure.
100%.
In today's age. Now, how is it working on that?
Project was amazing. Being in the studio with all the artists, amazing. But what's most important for me is being able to represent Black and brown kids. Because when I was younger, we didn't have that freedom to speak about mental health, and we didn't have the support. You know what I mean? And so just to know that, like, so many kids are calling and being courageous enough to call, that's big. That's the win. That's the courage is the win.
Do you think that the social media apps nowadays, because social media is bigger than ever, we use it for everything, business, life, it's huge. Do you think that played a big role in kids' mental health today?
100%.
Yeah.
Kids, adults, everybody.
Too. Everybody.
I say this. I have this take on social media where we're looking at people in their prime time moments while we're sitting in the meantime.
Did you make that up?
Yeah. So prime time versus meantime.
I almost dropped the
just
mic
think
already.
About, no, for real, think about
started.
that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And we're looking at all these prime time moments and what's going on and filters and who's out and about. And I have friends in the business, very famous friends, that we have candid conversations that are like, who are we? And why are we here? Not what do we do? Yeah. So the social media is about the what. And I'm on a mission, especially with this Kids Help Phone project, to be like, let's focus on the who. Who are you? How are you doing today?
Right.
He's like, how are you? I'm fine. No. How are you today, right now? How are you feeling?
Right.
Why do you think therapy is something that maybe other people should start like getting into?
It's worth a try. I think that I probably did it for like a year straight. And that was like a weekly thing for the most part. Sarita she was like everything that I needed in a therapist. I think you figure out like who fits you the best. I needed somebody who was like a sister in some moments, a best friend in other moments, auntie or a mom in other moments. So she like filled every like category that I needed for a therapist. If I did something stupid, she could cuss me out a little bit. Like it was every bit that I needed. It was like a little bit of realness, a little bit of like school related things that she learned. It was everything. The psychology of it, the way that she communicates. She's from LA in general, so she's from like, if I'm not mistaken, like Inglewood or Compton area. So it was like talking to somebody who was a friend, and that's just what I needed. And I did it, not as long as I needed to, but I still talk to her. Like I just went to her wedding a few weeks back.
The whole time my thought process on therapy was the therapist will always snake you, because I played a lot of GTA 5 and like, that therapist, he literally wrote a book. I'm like, that's not even legal, bro. Yeah. But to hear that from you, I still had to take that in.
Yeah, it's cool. I'm telling you, it's definitely a game changer for me. It was a game changer for sure.